round 9 NR redo. It was Israel Dissat and a stock AC. And starting on the Dissat flow. Go to contention 1. Extend Bloomberg 127 that Israel wants economic sanctions should be placed on Iran because sees Iran as a global threat and a threat to its own sovereignty because Al-Qaeda has increasingly cited how the Holocaust never existed and that it would use the nuclear program to affect Israel's sovereignty, and that Netanyahu has cited how he doesn't want a lunatic country to have a nuclear weapons program. And I control the direction of the uniqueness here. That means that even if you buy his turns after I defeat them with analysis, this means that they won't matter because he doesn't change the direction of uniqueness, so that the impacts will still be happening in his world. Even so, as long as Israel still perceives Iran as a threat, it doesn't matter if China and Russia won't be able on sanctions because we'll still trigger the impact scenario. And go on to Kagan. He says one turn that China and Russia won't be on board and they need support from other leaders. That's in the text of the card, but the card doesn't specify that China and Russia are key. It says that other leaders in reference to Obama in the United States, how Obama has the opportunity to make the world a dramatically better pace, and that the leaders can be anyone. And 2, this is not a turn. There's no impact to this argument. And 3, the grassroots organizations would be increased. The people are calling for the sanctions themselves, meaning that when we place the sanctions on them, there won't be some sort of shift in resources in the economy, or the China and Russia won't matter because the grassroots organization will be gain power because an international verification of what their argument is in terms of the oppressive nature of Ahmadinejad and the regime. This is empirically proven when people had protests against the Burmese dictatorial regime in Burma when they imprisoned people, and there are protests all over the country. It's an international consensus. And furthermore, since the oppressive regimes will stay in power, people will be going to the grassroots organization as a way out of the suppression it serves and its incentive to then unite behind the regime. And he says on the Phillips Evans in subpoint B that I have to win this card at the contention in order to win the impacts to the standard. Yes, the case is syllogistic. This isn't responsive. So extend the Phillips 115 evidence to talk to you about how Israel is ceded to the U.S.'s engagement strategy with Iran, but they want sanctions to be placed on Iran, and if they don't, they are prepared to attack and will attack. And also extend the Bolton 9 evidence that an Israel attack on Iran would have multiple implications globally. That one, it would draw the United States in due to terrorist attacks on U.S. forces in Iran, would also increase tax U.S. forces, and furthermore, the Israel attack would provoke an Iranian counterattack, which would then lead Israel to use its own nuclear weapons, and then have a nuclear shootout in the Middle East that would draw in the United States because of its interest there. And also the fact that Hamas and Hezbollah would attacks would be stepped up in Israel, meaning that Israel would continue to provoke Hamas and Hezbollah, which ensure continuous terrorism, which means that the entire population of Israel would be in jeopardy along with the global order, meaning that I outweigh here. He says that the standard is in order to increase net benefits in the international system. The fact that there would be no international system with extinction means that this is the ultimate net benefit that we must look to in the round. This is the first place we can go negative, and is the first impact you have to look to. The only way the affirmative can win the round is if they can somehow disprove the entire impact scenario, but seeing that they conceded the impact and the link story above it, the only argument they make is on solvency, but they don't answer the fact that solvency is not a question here, it's rather perception. As long as Israel sees us putting sanctions on Iran, this is what matters. It doesn't matter if they actually work. So go on to the AC. He makes an overview that all my turns are predicated off of regime change, but that's not true, and even if it is, I will clear up these turns. So go to the first contention on the Morgan evidence. Extend the turn that the economic sanctions create incentive to join the international order because there's more buyers and more access to the international system, which means it'll be economically beneficial to join the international order. And further, exclusion from the international order makes the center state feel like the target state rather feel like Upper Raya, and thus they feel excluded, which is bad. The population must be incorporated with the international system so they can gain these benefits through trade and also being able to interact with other states and creation of alliances, which is another reason why this is going to link back to the standard because it creates a net benefit. He specifically talks about how alliances and things like that are good, and thus with the international order being created, the sanctions provide incentives to join such international order and act multilateral with other states. It has nothing to do with regime change. And the only response he makes to this is that the successors are attributed to other factors, but I've proven to you that by the very nature of economic sanctions, they exclude the state from global trade. This means that there's no other attributes. Economic sanctions are the only thing that can do this. And furthermore, extend that if the law is less profitable than the black markets, then the countries will go to the black markets anyways, meaning that there's no impact to economic sanctions because he sees in cross that the reason why people go to the black markets is because trade within the law is less profitable. Thus, if that's true, then there's no impact to his own scenario. And he says that economic sanctions create more stability in the region, but one, there's no reason to look to his Department of Agriculture evidence because it's not from foreign policy. He concedes that you should look to prefer the Kagan evidence. He was a foreign policy analyst and worked for various administrations, meaning he knows what goes on in the field of foreign policy, whereas the U.S. Department of Agriculture is made up of people who are focused on domestic issues related to agriculture in no way, which is in no way correlated with economic sanctions. And furthermore, he doesn't answer the turn that economic sanctions dispose the regime because they feel the grassroots organization. You can classify the analysis from the NC about how the grassroots organizations get an international consensus which verifies their argument they're making about the oppressive leader, and the people see an incentive out of the oppression action, meaning they'll then move to these grassroots organizations, which will gain strength, and they'll be able to displace the leader. And furthermore, even if the sanctions do create more stability in the region, I outweigh here because the perception of placing sanctions on Iran is what it triggers the Israel impact scenario. So it means that even if we strengthen the Ahmadinejad regime, the fact that we're placing sanctions on them is enough to show Israel that the U.S. will back them in any instance, and meaning that even if Ahmadinejad stays in power, he won't be a threat because the U.S. has their back in the region because we are listening to their own foreign policy advice. But furthermore, he doesn't respond to the fact that the citizens are asking for change, meaning that there will be sovereignty in Iran. That the citizens are asking for change as seen in the June 12th protest of the elections. So, I'm clearly winning back to the standard of the fact that by disposing of international regimes when we feel like a grassroots organization, this is a net benefit because it gets rid of dictatorial regimes that would be a harm to international society. And furthermore, the Eland evidence. He concedes that war is inevitable, that the economic sanctions are the direct reason of an increased war in the international system because economic sanctions are alternative to war, which also goes to concede the fact that we can use economic sanctions before war, and it is a step before military intervention, as proven with the entire impact scenario of the NC, that Israel is asking for sanctions, and we are not going to use military intervention. We are preventing Israel from using military intervention through economic sanctions. Both of these go concede, and this is the only impact on the round that he could possibly use to outweigh the Israel impact scenario.